Let's Take This Outside with Marianne Iveson, the podcast where she speaks to athletes, outdoor professionals, and scientists about why they connect with nature.
Rick Vidal is the owner of NewVida Preserve, a 2,000-acre resort in the Adirondack High Peaks with a rich history as a former ski mountain and only minutes to Whiteface. He also founded Cascada Farm in the Hudson Valley, a historic 400-acre farm with incredible waterfalls. Prior to this, Rick was a senior data scientist at Google for 10 years, a tech entrepreneur, consultant, and physician. He and his husband, Matt, have 3 beautiful kids. Please welcome Rick Vidal. Rick, you and your family have this gorgeous property, and I can't wait to learn more about your story. Welcome to Let's Take This Outside.
Thank you for having us. We're very grateful.
I have to say, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong, your life is a little bit like a Hallmark movie from the outside. You worked in tech, or maybe you still work in tech a bit. I want to find out more. And it's like you wanted to get away from the big city, and you and your husband and kids now live in a little mountain town in upstate New York. You know, could not have written a better story. Has anyone compared that yet for you?
No one has drawn that parallel, but it's definitely, I can see from the outside in how it appears that way. It's definitely involved a lot of partnership, and a lot of, sacrifices that my husband and I have made. We're also the type of people, as you can see from our careers, especially me, I've kind of reinvented myself many times where I believe, some of the steps were purposeful that we took. Some of them were just natural and organic, where we stepped into something that we were passionate about and it was fruitful. And so we just said, okay, let's take it to the next level.
First of all, what you mentioned before I hit record that you grew up in Florida, but I want to know where your love of nature began, because clearly that is deeply ingrained in you.
Yeah. So both of my parents are from Cuba. I was born in Miami. They had a passion for the outdoors. So almost all of our vacations were to park systems in Canada, in South America, in the US, and Europe. And from a little boy, they signed me up to the Cub Scouts. So I kind of grew up through the Cub Scouts, through the Boy Scouts, and then I stayed in several high adventure troops as an adult beyond that. And that was really what just created this intense love for the outdoors: hiking, biking, climbing, skiing. I was able to bring my husband into it because him growing up in New York City all of his life, he was less exposed. He was exposed some to skiing in some of the areas, but he was more of a city guy.
How did you guys meet? Again, back to the Hallmark movie, big city, nature kid.
We met, actually, our engagement story, you definitely would say it's a Hallmark engagement, but we met on MySpace 17 years ago now, when MySpace, this is pre-New York and even federally there being, legal marriage for gay couples. And so we met 17 years ago then. 2 weeks after exchanging messages on the platform, we met in New York City for a date. And from that point on, we were continuously dating. He was in law school in New York City. I was in Philadelphia in med school. And that's just kind of how it started.
So were you dragging him, maybe not dragging him, but were you taking him out and taking him camping and taking him places and
Absolutely. Yeah. From the very beginning, I got him, really, really more comfortable, in skiing. I got him his diving certification. I got him into backcountry hiking. And, I had to ease him into it. In the very beginning, especially, I love doing the hiking where, you plan a multi-day route completely, backcountry, not even on trail. And so, there is bushwhacking involved. There is, the work of carrying 40 pounds on your back and, breaking down camp every night. And so I had to really ease him into that. But his love for it has grown.
And what about your kids? I was going to ask later, but I'm going to ask now. What are your kids gravitated towards, and how old are they?
We have a 6-year-old and then twins who are turning 2 this next Wednesday.
Oh,
so, they've both, it's a lot. So Finn was born when we were still partly spending some time in the city. We were already in full time in Rhinebeck on our farm, but we were still spending, weekends here and there. But those were his earliest memories. Really, in the majority of his time, he's grown up on the farm or here in the mountain. And so because of that, he's just so comfortable similarly with the outdoors. I'd say he goes out even here on the mountaintop with our St. Bernard on his own and hikes around and plays with the snow and does things on his own and loves exploring and hiking.
So I've been in NewVida, but it's Cascada Farm, correct?
Yep.
And I don't know the full geography of New York, but it's south, right? Or it's near Albany, maybe?
No, it's farther south than that. It's 2 hours north of New York City, and it's 3 hours south here of the Adirondack High Peaks. So it's kind of just almost smack between here, Lake Placid and New York City. And so a little bit south of Albany. It's a 400-acre historic farm, similar in concept in that, it has this beautiful, rich history that the local community wanted to revitalize, and we loved that. And so they really welcomed the type of development that we were invested in and really had the opportunity to focus on wellness and planetary health, much like we're doing here.
You are what I call an overachiever, by the way. You were a senior data scientist at Google for 10 years, tech entrepreneur, consultant, and a physician. You were also a doctor?
Yes.
It's normal things. Are you still working in that space at all, or have you completely shifted your priorities in your life?
I've shifted. So I started off my career as a physician. I focused on infectious diseases and did a lot of work. So I was predominant always on the public health side, working from a data science perspective on how to address disease and drug resistance, and lived and spent time in sub-Saharan Africa and Haiti in really impoverished communities, both setting up clinical work, but also doing public health research with the NIH and the CDC. And then I did my MBA and wanted to just branch out and learn a little bit more about other industries. So I did work in consulting in healthcare, but also started to get into tech and other areas. And that's where my love for tech really blossomed, and the data science continued to blossom. So I really was focusing on a branch of machine learning there, and started to learn how to program and how to really model from a data science perspective. And so I came to Google after starting a tech company and was there for 10 years working some in healthcare, but largely in their ads division as a data scientist. And while I was there, I founded Cascada Farm. And that happened very organically. We had the idea of buying the farm more for a refuge for our extended family. We're really close as a family unit on both sides. And as we brought the ecosystem and the environment and the wildlife all back to life and really restored a lot of the history in this farm, a lot of our friends and family said, you should start to build an experience around it. And we did. And still to this day, it's 5 years in, we have spent less than $1,000 in marketing across 5 years, and it has over 2,000 five-star reviews. So it's really just blossomed organically in a beautiful way. And that's what allowed us to say, okay, where do we do this at a bigger scale? And that's what led us to NewVida.
Who do you find mostly visits? Is it people from, bigger cities who are coming, especially New York City being so close? Is it people who are coming and trying to escape from the city, or is it just nature lovers exploring new areas?
So we have both tourists. Our customers are kind of two big segments. We have the tourists and the local or seasonal locals. From the tourist category, 60% are Canadian, and most of them coming from Montreal or Ottawa. Some southeastern, I'd say Canada, but really those two cities seeking to escape their urban areas. And they're people that love the outdoors, know the Adirondacks, love to come here and explore the area seasonally. 20% then I'd say is from Western New York or their mid-sized cities from Albany, Syracuse, Rochester. And then the last batch, the 20%, is from New York City traveling up.
You mentioned earlier that you spent a lot of time in Canada as a kid. I'm in Ottawa, Adirondacks are 3 hours away. Where were you exploring? Were you out west? Were you in the East Coast? Where were you going?
Both. So from a city perspective, we traveled a lot to Quebec City and Montreal because we like the culinary scene. I know Montreal is a big city, but I love the restaurants and the history, and then skiing a lot in Mont Saint Anne and Mont Tremblant. And then on the West Coast, skiing a lot in Banff and in Whistler. Especially, I love the backcountry skiing out there.
Do you go still now? Are you able to?
I do. I haven't been able to this past year do much travel, to be honest, because this has consumed us. But yes, we like to do at least one big ski trip a year out somewhere on the West Coast.
I don't want to make you jealous, but at the end of February, my sister lives just outside of Calgary, and we're doing a backcountry, cross-country ski, if there's enough snow, to like a lodge in Banff National Park. And I'm sorry, awesome. I'm so excited.
That is awesome.
I was very, very excited.
Awesome. Yeah, we did like a cabin-to-cabin experience out there, me and my sisters, that was like dog sledding just going from camp to camp. And it was just phenomenal. Just us, the guide, and pure wilderness. And it was beautiful.
I feel like you're kind of an honorary Canadian, it feels like.
Thank you. I love that.
I feel, and you're so nice.
Oh,
so
I
yeah,
love
you're
that.
you're very, very welcome. And I talk about the Adirondacks so much on this podcast. I must drive people nuts. But driving through parts of New York, there's maybe some things I don't personally align with. But when I arrive at the Adirondacks and I meet the locals and I return to the same places in the coffee shops and the restaurants, I feel completely safe. I feel completely welcome. There's just something about the area. I actually talked to one of the locals who I've met a few times, and they said, and I don't know how true this is, but I believe it's like on granite. I believe the Adirondacks are built on granite. And they said it's a very grounding, a grounding mineral. And in my head, I'm like, okay, maybe that's why I feel so welcome. I don't know. I just pulling it out of there.
Yeah, what I love about it is there's an intense authenticity here that people live by. They're also fiercely loyal. When they find a community or a business that they want to support, they will be really fiercely loyal to it, which is awesome. And they're also, unlike in New York City and the other areas, and I love my urban environments, but there you can immediately in a social setting get into conversations that become highly politicized, whether it's about religion or government or everything else. And you kind of break off into factions like, okay, they don't have the same values. I'm going to go over there and you're going to go my ways and we're going to part nicely. Here in the North Country, there's something that supersedes all of that, right? If you've made a commitment to live here and a commitment to the outdoors and it persevering in this area, it doesn't matter if it's Joe down the road that is, highly opposing points of view politically, he will drop everything to support you. And it's kind of like a loyalty and a kinsmanship that supersedes everything else. And I haven't found that anywhere else where I've lived, even temporarily. So that's been nice.
What you just described is what I feel when I go down there. So you mentioned it happened organically, but what was the turning point for you to say, whether it was, Cascada or whether it was NewVida, I want to buy some property. I want to turn it into something extraordinary. I know you said originally for your family, but NewVida is an entirely different level of welcoming humans into your space.
Yes. Cascada happened organically, and it's different in that, we have still a farm valley that we keep private. And then it was a series of cabins. It had the history as a trout farm and a horse farm, but the waterways and a lot of the wildlife had long, past been absent because the ecosystem was no longer thriving and needed to be revitalized. And we worked with the DC and a lot of bodies to, make the freshwater ecosystems and the forest ecosystems, alive again. We just really enjoyed that journey. And it was at that time where we said, okay, we can no longer expand Cascada because of zoning limitations and other limitations like that. And so we started looking for an opportunity. And this was the largest property available in the Adirondack High Peaks. It had this beautiful history. And when I met with the locals, this had been, when you mentioned Paleface, which was what it formerly was, there's a smile and a love that immediately comes out, pouring out, because for 35 years, all of their gatherings, their celebrations, their memories were grounded here. And then it evaporated because a family bought it out and made it private for another 35 years. So it was like this huge dead space, in the middle of the park system that they could no longer access or experience. And so they were really excited for us to come back. And I think it was that energy that gave us the momentum to invest, to take the risks that we did, to continue to build to this day, to work as hard as we are. It's definitely a massive project and a massive undertaking.
I don't want to keep going back to this, but that's kind of like where the Hallmark movie really comes in. You take this old ski lodge. I don't know what it looked like really before other than pictures, but stunning. Did you instantly look at it and you were there with your family and say, I know exactly what I want this to look like?
I did. I had that vision. So I came and hiked at least 3 times. I really wanted to explore all of the land, all of the buildings and fell in love with the history, with, the local community, with the trails and the ecosystem here. This has also been really, really well preserved because in the entirety of all the years of Paleface, the prior family, so at least going 100 years back, this area has not been logged at all. The forest ecosystem is thriving, it's mature, the wildlife has not been hunted. So it was just really a thriving and well-preserved ecosystem sitting right here in between these townships. And when I just came, I fell in love with it. Now, once we closed on the property, there was some hard points. There was a caretaker on the property that wasn't very welcoming to the gay community, and there wasn't any plans or anything. This lodge was built in 1961. There's no map of the electrical, of the septic systems, of the water systems. And he basically handed me a bucket of keys, said, I don't agree with the way, you're and your family's lifestyle. And he left. And so for a while, my husband and our kids were down in Rhinebeck and I was here alone. And it was a little bit like The Shining, it was the middle of winter. I had 2,000 acres and 12 buildings. I was completely alone. I didn't know a soul up here. And I had to just start to take every piece at a time. But, it was hard in the beginning. I'm not going to lie.
Let's Take This Outside now has a newsletter. Keep up to date with outdoor news, events, and great discount codes and deals from our partners. Sign up today at letstakethisoutside.ca.
It sounds like, just from our conversation a couple minutes ago, that there are so many other people who are welcoming and open and loving, and you originally had that caretaker say those things to you. Was there any kind of regret or any kind of what did I just do?
Well, in that moment, it came to me with such a shock when he said that to me, because the way he said it was, I don't agree with your lifestyle. More importantly, he said, I don't want my kids to be around you and your family. And as a father who's worked so hard, to have children and who prides himself in being a good father and invests so much, that's hurt. But at that moment when it hit me, I said, you know what? I can either respond defensively and say, great, pack up your bags, get off this property, or I can kill him with kindness. And I did. I killed him with kindness. And he had 9 kids. And I let them stay and ride out the end of the month. I didn't immediately kick him out. And he was living here for free and obviously using our vehicles and everything else, all our utilities for free. And I think that kindness, though he still left, right, and we haven't maintained any sort of ongoing relationship, I think it made him think differently, at least a little bit. It got the gears turning to be like, oh, wait a minute. There's this guy, he didn't react exactly like I thought he was. Maybe I should rethink this a little bit. And a couple of times he's sent me messages and just checked in. So who knows? Those are those little life moments where hopefully you can leave an impression in some way.
Well, a big part of what you are doing, because it's not just lodging, it's not just the recreation with the hiking trails and the skimo trails, and you have dining, it's about community. And so the fact that you're, back to the kill them with kindness, you are actually bringing people together, mixing the tourists with the locals. You are bringing together a community, and that's the whole point of what you're doing, right?
That's the whole point. I use the word, when people say describe NewVida, I say it's a gathering place. I don't use resort, I don't use lodge. I get from a marketing perspective, you have to ground yourself in those terms. But at the end of the day, I want it to be for a place for people to gather, to unwind, to meet, to grow, to learn, to experience, and just a gathering place. And when I see that happening, like this Saturday, Matt and I were here and we were just having cocktails, and a friend of ours came and we were playing a board game way off to the side, which gave us this really interesting visual perspective. And there were all these groups, some people just lounging in the couch area, other people playing pool and ping pong, other people sitting at the bar. The restaurant was thriving and full. The live music was incredible. And there was people in the balcony overhang, just enjoying it. It was exactly what we had envisioned. People were just making themselves at home, and enjoying the company and the community. And that's really powerful.
And also giving you kudos that it's so new too. So the fact that
so new,
so maybe that's what the community needed. That's what the locals wanted.
Yeah. I mean, from the moment we got here, that's what we've kind of just tried to listen to. In Google, working on product development, it was all about listen to the feedback, look at the analytics and the data, and let the consumer's voice influence the direction of your product. And it's the same thing here. When we got here, within the first month, I decided this is not going to be just a resort destination. this is also going to be a gathering place for the community because they need that. Then the community said, we want a gym. We want a place to exercise in addition to having a place to exercise outdoors. We never envisioned that they would want that. So we created a gym. And then, we were going to create this wing here that we haven't reopened yet. And we were going to immediately convert that to lodging. And the community said, no, we want a business center. There's a lot of local businesses that want to base their businesses here, from salons and to Ayurvedic doctors and physical and occupational therapists to gear shops and liquor shops, right? So why don't we make this one wing, a little wing where this is a place to gather, right? You can come here and get your haircut and go to the bistro, stay for the bar, or go ski, and then come and get some gear and maybe a bottle of liquor to bring home with some, prepared food. Like, we want it to be a place where people can just come and go, in a relaxed fashion.
That's the best part, is it's like you're in this beautiful setting, but you don't have to leave the property.
Yeah, you don't have to leave.
you don't have to leave the property. You've kind of already answered this, but why the Adirondacks? You have answered this, but I kind of want to ask again. Yeah, why for you and your family? Because there's so many beautiful spots in the U.S. that you could have chosen from.
There's so many beautiful spots. I think that a couple of things, I had grown up here and just already formed a passion and a love for the area. I think that it has incredible, authenticity in the community of people that live here, and a rawness that you don't find, often in a lot of other park systems. But I think it also has so much untapped potential. It's 6.5 million acres. It is the largest number of acres under preservation in the lower 48 states. And yet the majority of urbanites, at least in the US, I don't know if you could say the same for Canada, don't know about it. Some of it is because of the marketing. Some of it because I think the Adirondacks is still maturing as a destination. It has definitely incredible outdoor recreation, but it's just starting to come into its own in terms of having a diverse culinary scene and an art scene and a place for diverse people to gather, right? So it's still evolving itself while maintaining that rawness and authenticity. And I just saw that as an opportunity to be part of that change, be part of the change agent, as opposed to just waiting for it to, to happen and being, like a follower, to others. So.
You mentioned something about, preservation. You clearly care about nature. You clearly care about the environment. But how important is that to you? And when you are, doing construction and building up this property and the trails and the maintenance of that, how important is that to you as you develop this? Because it's very, very important to the locals. So.
Oh, hugely important to us. So it started with Cascada, where all the renovations, we approached it from an eco-friendly way, and all of the restoration efforts. There's a mile, for example, of a river that once used to be a thriving trout creek in Rhinebeck, but the river ecosystem had so many fallen trees and was so damaged, they didn't have all the appropriate wading pools and the flow and the current to really allow trout to run and spawn. And we worked with the DC to kind of recreate and bring that ecosystem back to life. It was the same thing here. I'd say anything new that we've touched, we've approached it from an eco-friendly perspective. All the new development that we are planning over the next few years is really taking advantage of the existing roadways, the existing cleared areas. All of the energy sources will be sustainable, and then we will work to retrofit what is. I think this lodge was built in 1961, and a lot of the systems are old. And so as we replace the boilers, I want to go 100% completely off any dependency on any oil, right? That's a huge goal of mine, completely go sustainable on energy sources. It's easier to do in new construction, right? Because you can plan for that. It's harder to do on these old systems
yeah.
That were built, 80 years ago. But we're going to get there.
What kind of outdoor rec would we find you doing with your family on the weekend when you have some downtime? What are you doing as a family?
Most as a family is hiking, because we can still, though it's starting to get hard with two 2-year-olds, because we have twins, to carry them in packs. They're starting to get so heavy where it's like, oh, this is more than just a regular backpack. But our 6-year-old can summit peaks and do everything on his own. He's kind of built the perseverance because we got him started at an early age. But the twins, most often that is family, just hiking and exploring that way. Maybe, small camping trips with the kids. I'd love this next season to get my 6-year-old into climbing as well, because there are incredible rock climbing cliffs right on the property. We have 2 guide troops that we're going to be working with that are going to be creating all the different routes, beginner, intermediate, and advanced routes up the cliffs. And so that's something that would be a great goal.
I'm a very, very beginner climber, but I looked at some of those rock faces on the hike and I'm like, this is awesome. I have some rock climbing friends that I'm like, you need to go.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. We already, mapped out a lot of the routes. And then we're going to be opening, like I told you, we're remarking the trails. There's a lot of advanced routes that I describe as routes where you don't need to be harnessed in, but you're definitely bouldering. You're on all fours as you summit. I'm still exploring. The other day, we found a shallow cave system on the property.
Wicked.
Yeah, I was exploring with my son completely off route and we're like, what's this? Unfortunately, it was a little bit of like a coyote den, like there was coyote going everywhere. So we're like, okay. But it was so awesome. We had to like crawl through these spaces to get in. And then it was this like, little cave system in there. It was awesome.
I will say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but like you're living the dream, but I know it's probably, we're like scratching the surface of how probably difficult it's been to build what this is.
It is. You have to love it. You have to remain positive through all the highs and all the lows. I think here in the Adirondacks, part of the biggest challenges that all the businesses face is really staffing, because the only university really that's nearby is the SUNY system in Plattsburgh. And a lot of those folks tend to migrate to urban centers for employment. And so I think that's something that I think has been the hardest, especially, tourism being the predominant industry and us having so many culinary programs. You need a lot of staffing. You need a lot of servers, a lot of housekeepers, a lot of dishwashers, a lot of food runners, a lot of bartenders. And often in a place where there's, where staffing is a challenge, those are the roles, those entry-level roles in the hospitality industry that are hardest. So I think that's probably been, the biggest challenge is just sustaining staffing with the rate of growth and not compromising our values. I want a team here that really sees themselves as having a career here and is incentivized as such, that is growing and that is learning, that is not just clocking in and clocking out to earn a paycheck. And that really likes the vision and all the benefits that we provide as new business owners. So creating that right team and that right environment is really important to us.
Is there anything else you'd want to share about NewVida that you think my listeners would want to know?
Well, we are going to be soon doing a promotion to have, on our lodging side, to have 10% off for all Canadians.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yes, that's going to run for a period of time. So you'll see some marketing about it. So it'll be 10% off of the lodging, particularly for Canadians. We love that population.
The exchange rate's so bad. It's so bad, Rick. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's just been a really, I try to meet most of the folks who stay here overnight, and it's been such a great community coming from Canada, and a diverse community, which is also awesome. And so we're going to be launching that promotion and having just that partnership and really trying to create a lot more focus opportunities for our Canadian population coming in. But no, it's going to stay tuned. We're expanding in so many different ways over the next few months. This next year, for example, is going to be the first year where we're also hosting events. So from 50-person dinners to 200-person weddings. We even have this summer a 400-person potential gala. So, this can also be a place where you host a significant member in your life, whether it's a retreat or event for your coworkers or a special celebration for your family and friends.
I've already decided, by the way, probably because there's like the Christmas magic glow when I visited with my friend, but I haven't met a guy at all. Like I'm not even close to that at this point. I'm happily single, but when I meet someone one day, I do want to get married there.
I love that. We will happily host you here.
Rick, this has been really lovely. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I'll put all the links in the show notes and everything.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and you're always welcome here.
Thanks for listening. For more Let's Take This Outside, go to letstakethisoutside.ca.
Produced and distributed by the Sound Off Media Company.